Interestingly, D'Entremont also suggested that there could be more floor crossers following suit. And you got to remember, Pierre Poilievre is facing a leadership review in January. So much for the front bench to talk about tonight. Sharon Carr is a CTV News political analyst. She's former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Laura D'Angelo is with Enterprise Canada and previously worked in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office. Jamie Ellerton is the principal at Canaptus and worked for Minister Jason Kenney during the Harper government. And rounding us out this evening, Sebastian Skamsky was former Director of Media Relations to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Hello, everyone. Happy Floor Crosser Wednesday. Laura, I'll start with you. In your view, how big of a deal is this one?
I think this is a pretty big deal for Pierre Poilievre, who's facing a leadership review in January, right? I think this is a pretty direct reflection of his leadership style, as Chris D'Entremont has said himself, that he didn't like that leadership style. I think this coming on the heels of Pierre Poilievre's comments about the RCMP, which put a lot of people off, and as you and I talked about on radio earlier today, doesn't really help the party get to where they want to go. I think that this is a big deal for him. It's going to be a much bigger deal if more members cross the floor, and if the news cycle continues to be what it was today, which is names flying around that sound pretty credible to be considering leaving his party.
Two of those names, Sebastian, I'll throw over to you. My instinct is that your feelings on this are quite precise. Two of those names, Matt Genereux from Edmonton and Dominic, why is the last name escaping me at the moment, but she's a Quebec MP. She put out a video. Matt Genereux put out a statement. It's not me. It's not me. Dominic Vien. Sebastian, what is going on here, and how big of a deal is it from where you sit?
I think it's important to remind your viewers that Mr. D'Entremont made this decision driven by his professional self-interest. It's expected, seemingly, from politicians that they will put themselves first, but it is unfortunate when it happens in such a blatant way. Mr. D'Entremont, in speaking with Politico, who broke this story, was clear that this was simply about the fact that he was unable to become elected deputy speaker, and he even mused about his desire to have a better likelihood in the upcoming election. So I think it's important to put in that context and understand that unfortunately, this is something that a conclusion he came to just a month and a half ago, having attacked the Liberal government and Prime Minister Carney, ironically enough, about the size of his deficit spending and the negative impact it has on the constituents in his riding. So it's a betrayal, really, of the Canadians and the constituents who voted and elected him to stand up to the government, to fight for lower prices on food, lower prices of homes, and affordability in general.
On principle, I 100% understand that viewpoint, Sharon. Politically, what do you think it says?
I think it says everything about Pierre Poilievre, and it says nothing about loyalty to a party. Listen, this is not the first time we've talked about it. This is not the first time I've heard about it. And it's also not the first time it's happened before. We see floor crossings happen. It's not something that happens too frequently, but it does happen. And I do think that this is purely an indication of how people within the party feel about Pierre Poilievre. Now, he's an excellent communicator, but he's polarizing. Like Laura said, his comments about the RCMP really struck a chord with a lot of people within the party. And, you know, there's been names that have been floating around for weeks now. We talked a bit about this a few weeks ago when there were speculations originally about a floor crossing. And I think, again, this has a lot to do with how people are feeling, who their representative is and who their leader is. And all politics, to a certain extent, is a local. So of course you're going to get people in ridings who will have mixed opinions about whether or not someone they voted from a specific party crosses the floor. But also a lot of people just want a good elected official who has principles and values. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And listen, we're probably going to hear more names popping around. I'm not surprised by the names we've seen. People like Matt Genereux are actually very reasonable, centrist type of conservatives. There's a lot of conservatives that I talk to, and he's someone that I actually find to be very reasonable, very thoughtful, and actually just generally a good person and a good representative. So I'm hearing a lot of talk in Ottawa that there is going to be more crossings that are coming. I know we saw this statement that came out earlier today from his office, but what I would say is that I think that we're going to see more coming up in the next couple days, couple weeks. And a lot of that is even kind of clear if you look at what's happening internally in the Conservative Party. Word on the street is there was a lot of hustle and bustle around what was happening in the opposition leader's office last night around strategy. So to be determined.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How significant do you think it is for the party if it stays at this one individual, Jamie, versus if there are others? And what do you imagine is happening behind the scenes to ensure that it does just stay with Chris d'Entremont?
Yeah, undeniably, Vashti, this is obviously incredibly disruptive. There's a lot of people who feel a really personal sense of betrayal, but I think the more you hear Conservatives kind of railing against him now in the coming weeks, all it's going to do is feed oxygen into the story and remind Canadians that a Conservative MP crossed the floor and joined the Liberals, and I don't think that's helpful to the Conservative cause right now. I think if you're Pierre Poilievre meeting with your senior strategy group, I think you need to, one, obviously go back and do your homework and look at every member of caucus, reach out to them, have those points of contact, who's in their good books, who are they more likely to take overtures from, and make sure that this isn't actually going to become a trend, because then it truly becomes an existential problem, I think, for Pierre's leadership. If it's one, I really don't think it's going to have that big of an impact. But the other piece, instead of talking about the deficit today, instead of debating the future of the country and the country's finances, we're talking about a floor crosser. And so Pierre Poilievre is going to have to somehow find a channel changer to really turn the page on this quickly and get back to holding the government to account so that he can be back on his front foot rather than back on his heels.
Do you think that's true, Laura?
If Pierre Poilievre wants to change the story and not have it be about his leadership and the flaws there, I think he does have to change the channel, because right now it's been a pretty great news, almost 48 hours now for the Liberals, and hopefully that continues.
You look glowing. I
am
will
glowing.
Have to
This
say,
is great.
as opposed to other weeks. Yeah.
It's been 25 hours. It was 4
Sebastian.
p.m. when it broke yesterday. It is now 5:30.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Fair enough.
Good correction. Good correction. Sebastian, the last word goes to you, because you had talked in principle, and like I said, I totally understand that view. I think some of his constituents, if not many, will share it. But from a political perspective, you had a front row seat to like how parties maneuver around various crises, around issues. Like, what will you be watching for in the next little while to see how this one is navigated?
Well, I think we saw an incredible rallying of support around Mr. Poilievre from caucus members today. People like Michael Chong, Michael Barrett, and really everyone in between on the spectrum. So again, I think this is really, and unfortunately, an isolated incident with Mr. d'Entremont, who will have a lot of time to think this through and understand that this kind of betrayal of his constituents, of the values that he held for so many decades, and especially ran under 7 months ago, is really unacceptable. And I think the people of his riding in the next election will have a say in that.